The first thing you need to know about politics in the United States in the modern era is that it's just really easy to hate the left. Like, if this is our political spectrum, the leftmost 5 or 10% is the most hated group in America. And I mean, that's just factually true. We know it based on how people vote and what they tell pollsters, and based on how candidates run their campaigns, and just from talking to people in everyday life. I mean, that's why there's a massive industry of people on this platform and on Twitter and on Twitch and Rumble getting very wealthy just by coming on here and hating the left every single day for hours. The reason that is so lucrative is that mainstream Americans, the normies, hate and fear the far left more than they hate and fear the far right. This is a controversial statement to some people, but I think it's easy to prove, and we're going to walk through it. But to be clear, I do not agree with them, and I'm not asking you to agree with them, to agree with this idea that the extreme left is more dangerous than the extreme right. I think part of that fear and hatred is based on how those beliefs get filtered through the media ecosystem. This is not a video where I'm going to come in here and beg the far left to moderate. What I'm saying is that nothing about what has happened in politics for the last decade and nothing about what is going to happen in politics soon will make any sense to you until you accept that this is how people feel, even if you disagree with them. It's kind of like if you were trying to, let's say, open a restaurant and you decided to make the restaurant spider themed. You have to know going in that you have an uphill battle getting the normies to eat there. If your goal with that restaurant is specifically to make people stop hating spiders, that's great. That's a noble goal. But the first step in accomplishing that goal is understanding that the average person right now is either repulsed by or terrified of spiders. And shaming them for it or yelling at them or insulting them won't work because they have a critical mass of people who feel the same way. You can't shame somebody out of a 95% popular opinion. That's not how it works. So, if you are out there and your goal is to bring the country around to what is currently considered an extreme left point of view, you have to start with the fact that right now, most average mainstream Americans of all races would sooner vote for the spider than for a far left candidate. That is your starting point. The main reason for that is that they think the far left stands for a single toxic, utterly lethal idea, something they consider a deal breaker. We'll get to what that is in a moment. First of all, a disclaimer. As I alluded to a moment ago, every person with a platform on here or Twitch or anywhere else still has a big red button in front of them that they can push at any time. This button has a dollar sign on it. Hating the left and attacking extreme forms of wokeness is still instant easy traffic and easy income. Because the far left is hated across the political spectrum, you get viewers and donations and comments from liberals and conservatives and honestly, even other leftists. The hardcore left makes for the perfect punching bag. Part of this is because almost by definition, people on the far left are those who are outside the mainstream. They're the ones who got bullied in school, the ones who don't conform to cultural norms about gender or sexuality or lifestyle. You know, a lot of them openly talk about having mental illness, which also makes them a target. A lot of the most vocal leftists are just young or they're college kids. A lot of them don't express themselves well. Like, a lot of them came onto the scene using language that kind of made them sound like aliens. You know, they're the ones who showed up in 2012 saying decolonizing intersectionality means we should stop othering black and brown bodies. The culture just sees them as off-putting people completely separate from any opinions they may hold. But I have put off making this video for months out of fear that it would get a bunch of traffic from viewers who just swept in to see those people get kicked around. And I don't want that traffic or that revenue. You're kicking people who, for the most part, are themselves struggling very badly. But my point here is only that the reason the numerical mainstream, the group I'm calling the normies, fear the far left more than they fear the far right is due to the fact that they have certain beliefs and sensibilities, and this is really not up for debate. It's just an observation of how they live their lives. For example, if I describe the average normal American as someone who believes in God and loves America and loves hamburgers and big cars and salutes the troops, someone will object that a person who doesn't do any of those things is just as much a real American as somebody who does. And saying that they're not normal is othering them. It's implying that they are lesser, that their opinions shouldn't matter, that they are broken and need to be fixed. But all I'm saying is just that it is objectively true that, for example, in the United States, 83% of people say they believe in God. Now, statistically, most of them are not devout. They don't go to church every Sunday. But if you like to sneer at the idea of believing in God, if you have lots of fun mocking the idiots with their superstitions about a sky daddy, you statistically have single digits on your side in America. That doesn't make the other side right or even good. And they're only normal in the sense that they're the overwhelming majority. It's just the reality that they have the numbers, and that group perceives that the right is friendlier to their beliefs than the left. And there are a lot of things like this. Statistically, almost all of the mainstream, all of the normies, have no problem eating meat. Most Americans eat it pretty much every day, if not for every meal. Only about 10% of the population is vegetarian, and many of those in polls say they eat some meat. Again, you can disagree with how that 90+% chooses to live their lives. You can say that eating meat is wrong, but you can't deny that they disagree with you. And when you hear a public figure saying that meat is murder, or saying that climate change will require us to eat less meat, that is never coming from a Republican. Likewise, overwhelmingly, this numerical majority of Americans I'm calling the normies own cars. And statistically, now most of them are big cars. They're SUVs or crossovers or trucks. Most of these people like their cars and prefer to drive on their commute even if other options are available. And if someone is in their ear saying that the environment requires them to take the bus or a bicycle, it's not going to be a Republican. If it sounds like I'm stating the obvious with all of this, it is obvious. But people get very mad at you for saying it, especially when we move into more contentious areas of disagreement. For example, and don't shoot the messenger here, statistically, the normies like and respect the military and also the police. That's reflected in everything about how the normies behave, in what movies and TV shows they watch. It's reflected in every poll on the issue and in how they vote, especially when they think that something like defunding the police is on the ballot. Like statistically, they will leave the House purely to vote against that in an election when they otherwise would have just stayed home. Also, the normies factually love America. Or at least they like it. Most of them don't travel abroad even when they have the opportunity to. They flock to 4th of July celebrations, and I can't stress this enough, they consistently vote against any candidate who has even a hint of anti-American rhetoric in their past. And, once again, if there is a public figure talking about how the United States is an evil empire built with slave labor on stolen land, that's almost never going to be a Republican. And this last one is the one that nobody believes when I say it. Like, even after I show them the polls, no matter how many data points I put in front of them, The fact is that the normies are generally happy with their own lives. Most of them like their neighborhoods and their jobs. In surveys, the majority say they like their bosses. Look it up. Pew does a survey on it. And this is incredibly important because this is why almost none of them want to see civilization completely upended. Roughly zero of them want a violent revolution to overthrow the current system or any other event that would radically disrupt their routine. Most of them want change, but they want that change in the form of a better position in the system. They want a better paycheck or better schools or safer streets. This is objectively true. It's reflected in every single action they take in their lives. At every opportunity for them to express their preferences, the thing this group, this diverse majority of the country, the thing they want is a chance to thrive in this current system. They want stability and safety and peace. And that is just human nature. The reason they hate and fear the far left more than they hate and fear the far right is that they perceive, I think incorrectly, that the far right is going too far in protecting those preferences I just stated, safety and prosperity, order, where they think the far left is going too far in trying to destroy those things. They believe, even if they won't say it out loud, that the civilization could continue to function under a far right regime, or at least that the worst impulses of that side could be controlled and contained, that the things they value in life would continue to exist in that scenario. But they believe that if the far left got their way, that civilization would stop functioning entirely because everything would descend into utter chaos and tribal warfare. And most people, if they had to choose between two dystopias, would choose that first one. And this brings us back to what I said at the start, the idea that they see the far left as having this one very toxic deal breaker of an idea. The thing that they feel like the loudest voices on the far left are pushing, which is the rejection, either stated or implied, of individual personal responsibility. If you're someone with a platform and you want the engagement that comes with yelling at leftist outrage stories, the ones that resonate the most with the normies, like the ones that get them the most fired up, it's where people express leftist opinions in a way that makes it sound like personal responsibility and moral accountability only exist for a small number of people who they also see as oppressors. It's where they're taking something that is objectively true, which is that the system screws over a lot of people and pushes it to a bizarre, monstrous extreme. There's a small vocal segment of the far left that makes it sound like they're just pro-crime, that you shouldn't be upset about vandalism or theft or anything else because that's all just a form of social justice. They act like every thief in the world is a starving person stealing food so they can survive, as if there's no such thing as somebody who steals because that's just easier than working. And this very small but very visible group will sound like they're applying that worldview to every possible way that a human life can go wrong. Whether it's a person's career or finances, they will imply that being a leftist means believing that every single struggling person is only struggling purely due to systemic oppression. They will talk like there literally is no such thing as a person who is struggling financially because they are lazy or because they made bad decisions with their money. They act like that has never happened even once, ever. And it's a thing that they say, but that they do not actually believe, because 100% of them know someone in real life who is struggling because they made bad choices. They, like all of you, have worked with people who were lazy and selfish and did such a bad job that you were relieved when they got fired. And I'm sorry, but if you have known any criminals, and I have, a lot of them do crime to support a lifestyle of sleeping in and partying. A lot of them absolutely could get a job if they wanted, and many of them have in the past. They just found crime to be easier and more fun, and statistically, their victims were other poor people. No one goes after the weak and the vulnerable like criminals. These are the guys who would happily steal a grandmother's social security payment and use it to buy weed, and they would not lose 1 minute of sleep over it. That archetype is not the invention of far-right commentators. I have met those guys. I've been in the room with them. So if you approach the normies and you tell them that the things that they can see play out with their own two eyes aren't actually happening, that no one is, for example, living in poor health due to their own lifestyle choices. And then when you tell them that going along with your political movement means that they need to deny what they have seen with their own eyes, they will walk away every time. They would prefer a future with climate change and security rather than a future without climate change, but with human feces and hypodermic needles on the sidewalk. You're going to say that's a false choice, and I will agree. But the reason Trump got a second chance in 2024 is that the normies absolutely perceived that that was exactly the choice they were being asked to make. Now, the good news is, I think the last 60 years of history has made it clear that the normies, not the far right, but just the mainstream in the middle, will compromise on all sorts of things. We saw it through the civil rights era, the gay rights era. The normies voted for a black guy whose middle name was Hussein after years of relentless bad headlines about people with names like that. Even the stuff I talked about earlier, the hamburgers and the cars, they'll compromise on a lot of that stuff. Lots of the normies would have no problem voting for a vegetarian if they agreed on other stuff. Most of it is not a deal breaker. But this one thing is the perceived denial of human agency, the perceived rejection of the idea that your life outcome is to a large degree based on your own choices. They see that idea as a knife at the throat of civilization. And they didn't need a right-wing talk show host to convince them of it. That part of the far left's message just sounds like madness to their ears, just based on everything they've seen personally about how the world works. Now here's where someone will say, wow, Jason, it sounds like you hate this worldview a lot. And in fact, it kind of sounds like you agree with the normies that this is a repulsive idea and that you're just laundering your opinion through them. But I actually think that the voters who turn to the right purely because they're afraid of crime are ignoring the fact that based on all of the available data, crime of all types is at an all-time low, at least in the United States it is. So if you're somebody who feels like wokeness gives people permission to do crime, the last decade has not given us any evidence of that in the real world. And if you're about to say that those stats must be misleading, it honestly doesn't matter how you gather the data or which political party is putting it out. You get the same result. People who remember the post-war years of the 1950s as being a period of time when you didn't have to lock your doors at night and when kids could walk to school by themselves. Statistically, it is safer to do both of those things right now, at least in the United States. A woman is safer to be alone with a man now than at any point in the past. So people who sit in small towns and the suburbs and can't go to sleep at night for fear that a gang of meth heads is going to come smashing into their home, that is largely an irrational fear. There's a bunch of reasons why crime is down. I think partly a lot of the bad behavior has simply moved online. I think that the guy who in the past would have gone out to a bar and gotten drunk and started a fist fight now just goes into YouTube comments and screams slurs at strangers. I think as a society, we've gotten better at containing and channeling violent impulses to other things. And a lot of that is due to listening to what the left was saying. Things like, hey, Some of these guys just need medication, that a lot of these boys just need to be socialized not to hurt women, and that a lot of these parents need to be socialized not to hit their kids. This stuff used to all be stuff that you heard from the whiny liberal hippies and feminists, but now it's just accepted that it works, and it has worked. The streets are objectively safer, and none of the normies agree with me. They largely think the world is descending into chaos. And that belief, the idea that the fabric of society is coming apart, that drives everything about how they approach politics right now. The far right may hate immigration because they're racist, but the normies have learned to hate it because they think it increases crime. And they think that the left's plan is to let people in and then not hold them accountable for anything they do once they're here, because they think the left doesn't believe in punishing marginalized people who do terrible things. Again, I'm not saying that's accurate, I'm saying that's what they believe. This is why the normies resist new housing getting built anywhere near them. Because when that new apartment building is going to be somewhere close by, they fear that more people means more crime and disorder. They fear the poop on the sidewalks and the hypodermic needles in the parks. It's not that they fear people, they fear people who are living without personal accountability. They don't vote for new mass transit because they think the subways are where you go to get mugged and where homeless people pee on the floor and scream in your face. But to be clear, this is not just about crime. The normies seem to think that the next generation is lazy and incompetent and that nobody is holding them accountable. They rant that the kids don't think there are any consequences for their actions. And maybe old people have always been saying this kind of thing about kids, but they specifically think that the youth of today believe that a good job and cool friends and an attractive partner will just land right in their lap. And if they don't, then it's not their fault. It's the system's fault, and their choices had no effect on it. They perceive that the social fabric is breaking down and that it is breaking down due to this single toxic deal breaker of an idea that they think the far left injected into the cultural bloodstream. This belief that nothing is your fault and therefore you have no responsibility to regulate your behavior. And they think that belief system will result in chaos for a bunch of different reasons. For example, they think it leads to a belief that because every bad thing in your life is due to some other powerful group's actions, that the only way to succeed in life or to have a better world is to go to war with whatever group that is. Because the world is a zero-sum game and that anything good you ever get in life has to be taken from someone else. That the left wants a future where everyone is just at each other's throats all the time. So going back to what I said at the start, I think some of you look at the world right now and see an opportunity because, for context, as I'm recording this video, Donald Trump's approval rating is at an all-time low. The war in Iran and inflation has made him as unpopular as he has ever been in either term. So you may be assuming that the normies will be so mad at Trump that they'll want to go way in the other direction the next time they have a chance. That it's not going to be Joe Biden next time. They're going to want somebody who will do the opposite of everything Trump is doing. They're going to want to abolish ICE and fund the sciences and defund the police and make college free. And you're going to be disappointed, if not enraged, by how whoever the Democrats run is going to spend so much time intentionally crapping on the far left wing of their own party. You're going to be shocked at how much they're going to talk about being tough on crime, at how hard they're going to try to reassure people that they're not going to take down the border fence, that they're going to be even better than Trump at stopping the terrorists and getting the drugs off our street, and that they're going to clamp down on shoplifting so hard that Walgreens won't have to lock the deodorant behind a glass case anymore. I know that this candidate, whoever it is going to do that because this has all happened before. And if you see that and don't like it, I totally understand, but you can't say you don't know why they're doing it. But I'm not an expert. I'm just a novelist who writes books with titles like this.